Blue-Red Flicker in Pauper, which is the deck that I lost to in the top 8 of the last Pauper challenge. Got eliminated by it in the quarterfinals, and that version was played by Kung Fu Trees, or Kung Fu Tree. And as far as I know, the deck was originally created by Genis Stone, so all the credit goes to them. And the deck looks sweet, so I want to try it out and take it for a spin in the Pauper League. So let's start that right now, and we'll see how we do with the deck. Very similar to the Temur deck that I was tinkering with. Slightly less of a recursive engine because you don't have access to Pulse of Murasa, but instead the deck is built to be a little bit more threat dense, has more creatures in it to begin with, so you don't necessarily need to recur to make sure you have more gas. And yeah, in this way the deck is more focused on Ghostly Flicker and doesn't have the cute aspect of pieces of the puzzle and accumulated knowledge in it, so you end up with a little bit less synergy, a little bit less raw power in terms of card draw, but your draws are going to be more reliable because Seagate Oracle and Muldrifter end up being better standalone card draw engines and also do a better job keeping the board under control while you're drawing cards, so you don't fall behind as often, or at least that's the plan. And this looks like a very reasonable hand. The one-off Scrat has the potential to be great in the late game, but it's pretty awkward with Izzet Boilerworks and Radiant Fountain, so at the moment it only deals 1 damage. So hopefully that doesn't come back to bite us. Though both against Mono Blue Delver and against a Tireless Tribe combo deck, which Island Preordain would indicate one of those 2 decks, and the 1 damage should be sufficient to end up killing something. So I'm not too worried about it being stranded in my hand at the moment. Though in those matchups, the slow setup of my hand with tapped lands and no access to red mana at the moment, I mean I have access to red mana, but it's going to take me 2 more turns until I have an untapped red. So that is a little bit worrisome if a fast Tireless Tribe comes out here, because no creature on the first few turns would indicate Tireless Tribe, though MTG bot is telling me that my opponent usually plays Izzet Delver, so maybe they just ended up with a slow draw and took a while to set up. That Evolving Wilds goes really well with my Brainstorm. I think I'm actually doing that now, so I don't run my Brainstorm into Spellstutter Sprite. Get rid of this Radiant Fountain probably. And the Boilerworks, keep one of the Boilerworks for late game mana development, and then use this Evolving Wilds to fetch for a red source. And then I have double blue for my counterspell and red for my Scrat untapped for the next turn, as well as I'm shuffling away the cards that I was not interested in. Okay, so it looks like they did actually switch to Tireless Tribe. So our read in that regard was correct. Now I have to decide whether I want to just run out this Muldrifter. No, probably it's better to start holding open Counterspell, though if I don't get to Counterspell something on my opponent's turn, I'm in a little bit of danger of discarding to hand size actually. Especially with my bounce land being the land drop. Might actually Brainstorm here and just hope my opponent dispels it or something. That would be great for me if they trade for this. Brainstorm usage is not especially effective unless I find Ash Barrens in the draw 3. It's going to be pretty useless that I did this. But yeah, now I found a land that allows me to not discard the hand size, and I feel like I can shuffle the Flicker away at the moment. Should be pretty difficult for my opponent to combo kill me, at least for the time being, when I have 2 answers to a creature and a counterspell, though eventually if we keep sitting around they will assemble enough circular logics and dispels to still make it happen. It's tempting to just not counter this actually, because it opens up their mana on their combo turn. Probably it's alright because it also opens up my mana. But like, if they get to dispel my counterspell here, it's pretty great for them, because then they can untap and have more mana available when they try to combo. Definitely need a second red source here. And an untapped land would actually be pretty nice, so that I can Seagate Oracle to make it necessary for them to Shadow Rift to get through my blocker. And at the same time keep open both of my burn spells. This is actually incredibly awkward, because now I do want to deploy this bounce land, but then I don't have 3 pieces of interaction open. These 3 allow me to fight my opponent's combo attempts on their turn, but I don't have the mana available for all 3 if I have to bounce one of these untapped lands. And tapping out for Seagate Oracle actually leaves me with a reasonable chance of just dying. So not a fan of any of this. Might actually be correct to just pass the turn and not make my land drop, but that's also super awkward. Then they can just pass back and not do anything. How likely is it that I die if I just Seagate? They have to have the Inside Out, the Shadow Rift to get through my blocker, and then, well, or Circular Logic on my turn to just counter it before it comes down. Yeah, I hate my spot here. So Shadow Rift, Circular, either Circular Logic, that's super likely, or Shadow Rift Inside Out, and then any of the 1 mana counters to protect from the 1 burn spell that I can keep open. And how likely am I to just find an untapped blue source if I preordain? Because that would allow me to make my land drop and still keep open counterspell. So I have 43 cards in my library, and these are gone, so 7 of them are islands. So that's odds 43, 7 hits. I look at 3 cards to find one of them. Only like a 40% chance of doing that. And not much else really helps me. I guess Dispel would be a good hit there as well. Okay, I think I'll go for the Preordain. Look for Dispel. If I Dispel, I can also put the Boiler Works into play and bounce this island. And if I find an island, so then I just get to play the island out and keep Counterspell open, then I have 3 pieces of interaction. Still not impossible for me to die with 3 pieces of interaction. They might Circular Logic this. Yeah, really, if I had a creature on the board already, this would be a very comfortable position, but with my creature being very expensive here in Seagate Oracles, so it's very easy for them to counter it, untap and kill me. And me not having a blocker yet, my opponent is not required to have a lot of pieces to just assemble a combo. I also haven't gained any life, though. This specific deck list doesn't run any Swiftwater glyphs, which is quite interesting. So I'm not, I have 1 Radiant Fountain, but other than that I'm not really gaining life to get above 21, because being at 22 or more life requires an extra card from them to get the power of their Tireless Tribe high enough for a kill. So at 21 or less life they need 5 cards, at 22 or more cards, 21 or 22 or more life they need 6 cards, and then once you get to 26 or more life they need 7 cards. So once you hit those breakpoints, comboing becomes more difficult for them, because they can't use Dispel or Apostle's Blessing as liberally, because it reduces the amount of hand cards available to them, and that makes it that they need either 1 or 2 gushes on the turn that they combo off, so that the cards that are being drawn with the gush and the islands that they return back to their hand both add discardable fuel. Opponent seems to be either AFK after I took such a long think about the situation, or considering using Circular Logic on this Preordain, which I would be fine with. Actually would be pretty happy about that development, because at the moment it gives me about a 50-50 shot at finding a card that I really want, or withing entirely. Because Islands and Dispel are like the hits, and anything else is pretty useless. Augur of Bolas is like right on the edge between being useful and not useful, because it does provide a blocker, but it gives me the equal exposure to Circular Logic that I was previously worried about when casting Seagate Oracle. And also it still opens me up to dying to Shadow Rift, which could very well be stuck in my opponent's hand. So yeah, still a pretty scary spot here. Facing Tireless Tribe on the board is just always scary, because they do have so many ways of protecting their combo that you can rarely really feel safe. Like, only permanent based answers are really something you can feel safe with. Krark-Clan Shaman, for example, or Circle of Protection White, Serrated Arrows. But yeah, if you're trying to fight their combo on this deck, then opponent seems to have gone AFK. I'm not certain. I'm waiting for them to react to my Preordain, but in chat they don't seem to be disconnected, or at least Magic Online has not acknowledged their disconnect yet. So nothing more I can really do other than wait for them to return, potentially answer some questions in the chat if there are any. And yeah. But yeah, I'm eagerly awaiting the Preordain resolving and seeing what it offers me. But right now there's nothing I can do to advance the game slate. Yeah, they still don't seem to be disconnected. Usually you get a message pretty quickly whenever that happens. They have 10 minutes of inactivity timer before they lose the match, and their last activity was, well, quite a while ago actually. Well, no, not that long ago, like 5 minutes, so they're halfway through their inactivity. And I took some time deliberating my play before that, so they might have just gotten bored, got up and get like a drink or something, I don't know. The joys of playing online Magic where you're not necessarily tied to your match and can take care of real life things whenever you wish. You wish there was a time on turns? Yeah. I mean, there is a timer for the entire match, so you're still obligated to manage your time well, but yeah, the inactivity is 10 minutes, which is quite long. Though obviously, if they waste this much time on a single turn, then they might end up being in trouble in the rest of the match by being close to timing out. But yeah, it could just be a technical difficulty on my opponent's side, I can't be sure. So yeah, I apologize for the wait, but not much I can really do about it. I guess I can show my deck list. Though, if you're unfamiliar with Stream Decker, there's a plugin that shows the deck list, so you can click somewhere down there to see all the cards I have in it. Hover over the cards and it explains the card text to you if you're unfamiliar with any of this. Seems they returned. And there's an island. The boiler works really not what I'm interested in. I could still die here, but at least I have 3 pieces of interaction open during my opponent's turn and did not miss my land drop. Yo, Seabass. Shadow Rift Forest. Yes. That is pretty promising because Shadow Rift is not a necessary part of the combo. So they might still be looking for a missing piece. Maybe they have multiple Shadow Rifts in their hand but haven't yet found an Inside Out. Sure. I mean, I'm still in a very reactive spot here. It's difficult for me to build up ward. That is very nice though, because that is one of the few cards I can use to contest the Tireless Tribe at end of turn. Maybe I should have already fired off. Yeah, probably I should have fired off Scrat at the end of my opponent's turn, because 5 damage is actually pretty threatening. Like, you don't want to Lightning Bolt onto a Tireless Tribe that is not yet switched their power and toughness, because then they can just discard any card if it's an extra land that they don't need, or like a second Tireless Tribe, an Augur of Bolas, whatever. They can always discard it and save their creature. What the hell? Okay, so they did have all the combo pieces, but not enough protection to feel confident. I think I'm willing to just fight over this turn and try and kill it. They might follow up with another Tireless Tribe, but that still seems favorable to me. Now that the power and toughness is switched, then they cannot use this ability to protect their Tireless Tribe. It's always going to be 1 toughness with a bunch of power. And if they have to fight over this on my turn, that's much better for me because they reduce the amount of cards they have left in hand. And also just fighting over this on my turn makes it so that if I win, all they can really do is play another Tireless Tribe, and then I get to untap and put like a blocker down. Once again represent these removal spells and so on. So I think fighting here is pretty favorable to me, though I will be vulnerable to a Daze. assuming they have a counter for my counterspell. And okay, so they don't. They did have multiple copies of Shadow Rift, but they lost their Tireless type here, and I still have 2 burn spells and a blocker when they just spewed off multiple of their Shadow Rift. So from here I feel like I'm in a pretty good spot. I did not die to the combo in the turns where I was bottlenecked on mana, and now it's very likely I get to build a ward here. They also missed on their Augur. They played like a desperation gush to find a secondary Tireless tribe, and then only came up with an Augur. The Augur didn't give them a card, so pretty comfortable position for me here. So they have 2 more islands in their hand that we know about, one from the Gush and one from the Ash Barrens. And this turn they don't even have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They don't even have Circular Logic open, so I think I will resolve this Muldrifter. I would have just played the Augur, which is why I tapped like this, but I wanted to give myself the option to cast a counterspell if I do draw it, so the badass pauper player, yeah. Hello, Goblin Master. Dizzy Spell. What? I mean, Dizzy Spell is a very normal inclusion, and it allows them to search for the Tireless tribe, but I'm quite surprised that they wouldn't keep open their White Stars to cast Tireless tribe. They got Giga Draws, so I guess that makes it so that they can tap me out and resolve their tribe, but usually that's not actually good against a deck that is fully based around instants, because I get to fight them on the turn where they play Tireless tribe, and then once again fight them on their combo turn, and a single Giga Draws doesn't cover both turns. So they can either tap me out and then make sure I don't counter the tribe, or tap me out so I can't disrupt the combo turn, but they can't do both with a single Giga Draws, so they would need a second Giga Draws to get themselves anywhere. Okay, looking forward to your glorious, I assume, Commander. Once again, board state. Yeah, those are always pretty sweet. Okay, so I can either overload on removal or get a second counter. Flame Slash is actually pretty weak to... Okay, I'll just get the second counter spell, even though it might also be weak to Giga Draws. But yeah, if they Giga Draws me here, sure, I can't use my counter spells, but then they resolve Tireless tribe and I just get to untap, and then I have 4 pieces of interaction for their combo. So not really certain where that gets them, how they're making progress like that. Though I guess it guarantees that they have another Tireless tribe in hand if they Dizzy Spell for Giga Draws instead of searching for a Tireless tribe. They need to have one. Both your win cons in a single turn. Not even sure what that means, but that sounds pretty sweet. I mean, what your win cons are, but I guess I'll see in the screenshot. Gosh. I think with how stacked my hand is and the fact that Giga Draws is going to be coming down pretty soon, I want to fight over this. Yeah, this, I mean, they get to resolve it, but I get more of their interaction out of their hand. There's like a limited amount of counters they can use to protect their combo. 4 Circular Logic and then some number of Dispels, somewhere in the 2 to 4 Dispel range. Usually like 3 Dispels, I think. Some versions run 2 Dispels and then Apostle's Blessing, which evens out to the same amount of total protection. But we've already depleted a lot of that, so with these in our hand, it becomes very difficult for my opponent to protect their combo. Also, we're just beating them down with Muldrifters, which is pretty sweet. And yeah, once I'm under the 21 life point threshold, I don't really have to worry about losing additional life anymore. I will, like, the next breakpoint is at 17. I don't think this Augur of Borderless is going to get 2 damage down to 17 in any way, because I still have one more Drifter back on defense, so trading damage back and forth here is still very favorable to me. Okay, there's the tribe. I think I want to counterspell before it comes down, just because then they have to pay full price for Circular Logic or expend a dispel. Sure. And yeah, both Harvestfire and Scrat are actually amazing against the tribe, because they deal so much damage that it's difficult for my opponent to protect the tribe with discarding cards. Like Counterspell and Flame Slash, a single card out of hand, denies the effect of those, but this Scrat already deals 7 and the Harvestfire can deal, I guess, 13 or something. Thank you, Mr. New Red Greedy, for your follow. Welcome to the stream. And yeah, I think I'm fine running out the Scrat. I mean, I'm running into Daze potentially, but the upside is I get to untap and Harvestfire. Maybe Daze is enough of a reason to not do that. Yeah, I guess I'll untap and see where that gets me. Okay, and these sorcery speed answers I have to fire off immediately, otherwise I just get like Giga Drowsed out of the game. This might entice them to discard a card, and then I'll fire off Scrat in response. Okay, we win. Yeah, that was, like, after the first combo attempt, it looked pretty hopeless for my opponent. When they had the Tireless Tribe on the board and I had no creature and like 3 answers, there was still some potential for me to just die. Okay, so I think I want like all the 1-mana answers that I have available. Uncertain about the Flame Slash. Hydroblast might be going a little bit overboard, but it still counters Inside Out. So this is like on the edge between being good enough and not being good enough. Arc Lightning seems too clunky, and like these Flame Slashes are also a little bit questionable. All the 1 toughness hate cards are great against the combo, and Serrated Arrows is especially great, because like they can't fight through it by giving additional toughness. The -1/-1 counter just sticks around and kills their Tireless Tribe on the following turn. And so yeah, these cards I want for sure. Well, the Electrocuries, they are not necessarily great. It depends a bit on how transformative my opponent's approach to the post-board games is. They might have access to Stormbound Geist, Spire Golem, Palace Sentinels, their own Serrated Arrows, more counter magic. Ghostly Flicker doesn't seem incredibly important to me. Like, I might want to have 1 in the deck for inevitability, but really that's not important. As long as I'm surviving and locking them out of their combo, I should be in a great spot. And Deep Analysis also seems too expensive of a card advantage. I need to keep a little bit of card advantage in my deck to keep up with their grindier sideboard setup. But really it's not that important for me to go over the top. As long as I'm surviving, I should be good there regardless. And maybe cut like even more of this, and then I can cut one of these. This is 60 cards, but there's still cards in my sideboard that would be great, and even just small drifters are pretty sweet. I'm not certain here how much more of this I can take out. Probably Moldifters are a better card advantage engine than Archaeomancers. Just take all the flicker stuff out and just be like a blue-red control deck. Pose the theory to my opponent that if I'm not dying, then they are not winning. But keep enough creatures in my deck that they can't just become the monarch and win from there. Okay, this hand looks solid. It's a little bit flooded, but well, that's dangerous. It's pretty great that I drew an untapped mountain here, otherwise I could have just died on turn 2. They can still put me through the test, and I might just die on turn 3 also. If they have Dispel in hand, in addition to an Inside Out, and then go for a combo on turn 3 with a single counter backup, I can't really do much about it right now. I would need to draw either another red source or a Dispel of my own. They might still be afraid to combo here, but yeah, Dispel plus an Inside Out already kills me. This is something that very rarely happens in the Tireless Tribe deck, just because they have very few untapped white sources on turn 1. Well, I guess they need to discard 5 cards still, so without a Gush they can't really protect their combo here. Because, yeah, if they have to discard their entire hand, then there's no way for a Dispel to still be left in their hand. And if they're just hitting me for 9, I'm going to let that happen. And then try to Lightning Bolt the creature at end of turn. Gosh. Damn, that means they end up with enough cards. So now I have to pull the trigger here and bolt in response, and then if they have Dispel or Circular Logic, I just die. Because if I wait, they also end up pumping this for lethal damage, so then I have to pull the trigger afterwards. Yeah, we died. Yeah, as I said, this rarely happens because planes on turn 1 is just very difficult to come by. They only have 2 planes in the deck, and then they have access to white mana through Ash Barrens and Evolving Wilds, but those both take to turn 2 before they can actually produce white mana, so turn 1 Tribe on the play is something that only happens like 5% of the time or something. Usually you don't have to worry about that. But yeah, if they have the nut draw of a Tribe on turn 1 and then Dispel back up, plus all the pieces for the combo, like in this case they needed Inside Out, the Gush was necessary, otherwise they wouldn't have enough cards, and the Dispel was necessary. Then occasionally they just run you over. Okay, so if I put these into the deck as well, and cut like these 2 or something, do I still have Inevitability? I probably do. Flame Slashes are not that great. Let's take those out. Like one of these back in. Maybe one of the Flickers just as an instant speed card draw. Once I have Augur of Bolas's and Seagate Oracles lying around on the board, I can use that to draw cards on my opponent's turn whenever they don't go for a combo. Yeah, that looks like a keep, but it's also slightly scary. Get those Titans swinging in. Let me look at the screenshot. Wow. Once again, I have like no idea what's going on. I mean, I know some of these cards. I mean, I know most of the cards, but like these Commander game states on Magic Online just look so crazy. You completely lose track of what is going on. I have no idea how you do it. Okay, I think I'll bottom these. The island is tempting because it allows me to Augur on turn 2. But I probably want to Boiler Works on turn 2. to get my red mana available to me. Yeah, I think I want untapped red more than I want the island. And if I don't find untapped red, I'll probably prioritize putting the Boiler Works on the board. That seems like a weird brainstorm timing, though I guess they are playing around Dispel by doing it now. And then they can shuffle their library on upkeep with an Ash Barrens. Yeah, I think what I said still holds true, that I want red mana available to me. Though red mana out of a bounce land is pretty awkward, because I can't tap the 2 mana for an Augur of Bolas and then represent Pyroblast on my opponent's turn, because I'm tapping out my red mana main phase. Okay, so the Azorius Gen 3 came in, which is the Michael Jacob like transformational sideboard plan indicator. This is in the sideboard to make the expensive cards like Serrated Arrows and Palace Sentinels more castable. The deck only runs 18 lands in the main deck, so casting these expensive cards is pretty difficult to do, and then if you board in this Gen 3 you have a higher chance of doing that with 19 lands and one of them taps for 2 mana. So I would assume they're just on MJ's list, though I'm not certain how many of the grindy cards they actually boarded in. I'll play the most expensive of my creatures here, and then it's easier for me to keep mana open on the following turns. So Scrat has more potential, but it's weaker at the moment. Probably still want that. When the Tireless Stripe is 1 toughness, it doesn't make a difference whether it's Scrat or Bolt. And I have the potential to actually get up to 5 basics, so that Scrat can potentially deal with the Tireless Stripe through a discard trigger. So no Stormbound Geist on their turn while I was tapped out. That's interesting. They might just be holding open Circular Logic here, and also could just follow up with Palace Sentinels next turn. I think I'm fine running my Augur into Circular Logic and not protecting it with Pyroblast. I think that's a reasonable trade for me, and I couldn't pay for it regardless, because now I get to like preordain, and yeah, Bolt looks alright, though I guess I'm super weak to Palace Sentinels here, because I don't have enough snow basics on the board yet to... Maybe I should have fought over the Augur, just so I have 2 creatures on the board. That does sound pretty good, Goblin Master, and yeah, being the Monarch is already great. I have never been the Monarch with Necropotence, but that also sounds very sweet. Okay, so no Palace Sentinels. Yeah, if I had Augur and Seagate alongside each other, I would have had 2 creatures that can attack through Palace Sentinels, so it's easier for me to contest the Monarch. But yeah, opponent ended up not having it or not wanting to put it onto the board, because then they still run the risk that I Flame Slash their creature and steal the Monarch from them. I could have run out Moldrifter, but this Moldrifter I actually want to protect with Pyroblast from Circular Logic, which they represent here, or Hydroblast. So I'm going to build up to 6 mana to do that. And I wanted to do it using Evolving Wilds instead of Boiler Works, because that allows me to get my Scrat to 4 basics, which deals enough damage for their 4 toughness creatures, which are Spire Golem and Palace Sentinels. Though the downside is that I just threw my way of shuffling the library away, so that it's more difficult for me to get value out of a Brainstorm. It's interesting though that they are like doing nothing and just keeping this much mana open. Maybe it's foolish for me to run Muldrifter into this much open mana. Because now I do have the basics available to me to deal with both Spire Golem and Palace Sentinels. So I could just pass back and the draw 9 Shambling Vent. It's basically like a better Griselbrand. That sounds super sweet. Okay. Need to watch my time a little bit. Opponent somehow managed to catch back up on time, despite being AFK for like 5 or 6 minutes. But yeah, they're somehow not doing much with their hand. They might be holding on to combo pieces and waiting for a moment where they can be sure that they're safe to go, basically. Looking for Giga Draws or something to enable it all. Or sitting on Hydroblast Circular Logic, which is what I'm worried about. Or like Dispel and Circular Logic. Those are the reasons I don't really want to run my Muldrifter out yet. Okay, are you going to make a more reasonable ban list? I guess it's not that difficult to make a more reasonable ban list than the official one. But yeah, the official ban list was like my biggest gripe with the Commander format, and we also had heavy house ruling when I last played the format. A lot of changes being made there, and I think many of them were for the better. Mostly that we banned like Mana Crypt and Sol Ring, so that the games were less swingy. But yeah, it's a difficult balance to find a way to shape the format that like all of the people involved are happy with. I think I'm running out another basic and then probably bounce land next turn. Once again, I can let go of the ability to shuffle to further improve my scrat, but it does make Brainstorm top decks worse. I feel like sitting around and doing nothing is still pretty favorable to me, and like a single Giga Draws doesn't beat me, as we had discussed in game 1. When is it Muldrifter time? I guess not yet. Let's just put this bounce land down. Also looks very scary to my opponent that I have like counterspell mana open, even though my hand doesn't actually contain a counterspell at the moment. Okay, they are happy to not do anything for even longer time. They probably should start firing off like end of turn hardcast gushes. Their hand size can still support that, and it would be like a reasonably scary end of turn threat that allows them to generate card advantage, and I might have to respect that. Now would be an okay time to run out Muldrifter. So Circular Logic, and then they need multiple Dispels, or like a Hydroblast in it as well. Well, it should be, no, I'll keep waiting. It should be very punishing for them to tap out on their main phase. Yeah, this looks like the gush that I was talking about. Though, I think I'll let it go. Wait for them to finally do something proactive. I mean, it's a little bit of card advantage for them, but the way that things are going right now, they will either have to commit something real, something with substance, into my counterspell, or will start discarding to hand size at some point. That is not a card I'm worried about. will just die as collateral to this Electricity at some point. Guess I'll make my brainstorm worse again and just get another island just so I can keep making my land drops without losing out on colored mana. So yeah, for now the Standard Bearer is completely irrelevant, and then as soon as they cast the Tireless Tribe, I will Electricity to try and kill it, and then simultaneously I'm threatening to deal damage to their Tireless Tribe. So in that case they really have to fight over the Electricity. Serrated Arrows going to the bottom of my library is not something I'm super stoked about, but Augur of Bolas finding a spell can never be bad for me. This is a tier 1 deck. I'm not certain yet. It seems to be very good against Red-White Monarch, so the more popular Red-White becomes, the better this deck gets. It's somewhere between tier 1 and tier 2, and I'm not quite sure yet where it lands. But yeah, it looks very promising. It looks like it could be a contender for a tier 1 pauper deck. It has definitely made top 8 last week, and it did very well in the top 8 as well. I mean, it does have the usual weaknesses of a blue-red deck. It's pretty weak to Boggles, I think. Probably pretty weak to Tron. So it has some similar matchups to Boros. But yeah, if it's good against Boros and Delver, then that's a great spot to be in the metagame. So it might be the perfect call for where the meta is heading at the moment. Shui E8, thank you for your follow. Welcome to the stream. So yeah, not quite certain yet how good the deck is, but it does look like it's a contender. And it looks like a good meta call at the moment. I don't necessarily think that the fact that I'm playing it is enough to believe that it's tier 1, because I do play a lot of crappy decks as well, both for my entertainment and the entertainment of the stream. As long as it's not a serious tournament, I'm very willing to play decks that are less than tier 1. Oh god, my time situation is actually not that great. I should have probably end of turn Electric Read. Just not because it's particularly good, but because it plays around having to discard to hand size. Okay, I guess it's time for Moldish Ring. And they probably counted this, so then I don't have to discard to hand size. Gush in response, interesting. Sure. Once again, I'll not really fight over their card draw spells, though that might backfire. Breakfast is tier 1, yeah, definitely. Sure. Okay, Moldish the Resolve. Now I'm back into discard to hand size territory. Damn it, opponent. Okay, I'll Electric Read this. I want my Lightning Bolts in hand because I have the potential to just burn my opponent out if they're playing it this slowly. I'll fight over this, not because I care, but because they might fight back, and once again I want to get cards out of my hand. If I get another Dispel out of their hand, that's pretty great for me. Though that might also save my opponent from discarding to hand size of their own on their turn, basically. But yeah, I've traded for Hydroblast, traded for Dispel, got two very mana efficient answers out of their hand, and I'm not really afraid of much here. Okay, let's get the counter spell out of my hand because it's also super efficient. Yeah, another Dispel. So now they're low on cards and they don't have that many Gushes left in their deck, which is the way that they would build hand size to make sure that they can combo off. So let's attack. If I put them to 6, then 2 of these bolts are actually lethal. Though I guess my blue mana is pretty limited. Maybe I should have kept one of them back, I'm not certain. Okay, let's see what I can brainstorm into. Yeah, because I have... Okay, never mind. I was gonna say I have 5 red spells, but only 4 red mana, but now I do have the capability of casting all of them. But I guess I'll delay the fight until my opponent's turn so I don't end up dying to something. And then they have to commit quite a few cards into the Tireless Tribe to even be able to combo off. And then my plan is not really going to be killing the Tireless Tribe, but instead trying to kill my opponent. Okay, this seems like a decent time to fight. Because they now have the least amount of interactive cards in their hand possible. 2 of their cards in hand are now islands, so... Though I guess it might not be the best time to... Sure. Yeah, like they're protecting their dude, but I don't really care. Because I'm trying to kill my opponent. Yeah, they stalled around long enough that my bolts will just likely end the game. Circular logic. Let's fight against that. Let's respond to that by trying to kill them again. If they're desperately cycling, then they probably ran out of answers. And like 2 of the cards in their hand are islands, so there can only really be 1 answer left.